So this week we are talking about group launch, about starting our groups to take a step towards Jesus and a step towards our neighbors. Hopefully you grabbed a pamphlet on the way in this morning and were able to grab that. We would love to be able to talk to you and walk you through what's going on for our groups this fall. And so I'm going to do that this morning as we talk about the different groups that we have available and what's happening. I know that during COVID, a lot of us felt like we were longing to get out and to find community. How many people felt a little trapped? A little bit like maybe you were caught in a cage and wanted to get out and were just desiring to no longer feel that sense of being trapped in your home. I think some of you got so used to the cage that you still want to stay in it. Two, I think there's a lot of people that are feeling like, you know what, I kind of liked watching Netflix 12 hours a day, and it's quite comfortable to do that, and I think I'm just going to go back and do that. But there's something in all of us that actually longs for community, that wants to be known and to know others, that wants to make friends and actually laugh with other people and not just with a soundtrack on the television set. We actually want to hear that kind of joy and enjoyment of people around us, and we've longed for community. We've longed for a chance to get out and be with others and to get to know others and to be known ourselves. And I think that's only going to increase as many are now actually staying home for work more and more, and now your social interactions in the workplace have probably lessened, or they're artificial to some degree through a screen, and you don't quite get to know somebody. You get to know this half of who they are and what they want to show to you on a screen. Well, our groups at Neighbours Church are all about taking a step forward in our relationship with Christ, but also taking a step towards our neighbors, giving us a chance to actually take off our masks and get to know one another. If you open up your brochure, the first little page there says, we realize that the earliest Christ followers met together in homes to live life and do church together. It was a vibrant, interactive community where everyone had a role to play. We want to get back to this original vision, because deeper discipleship doesn't happen by facing the same direction or watching a paid professional holy man or woman. It occurs when we turn our chairs inward to face one another in smaller groups. Only then can we take off our masks and do the real work of building authentic, life-changing relationships. But that's going to involve actually taking a step out of our comfort zones and going into deeper relationship with Jesus and our neighbors. Actually opening ourselves up into relationship with one another. And this morning I want to look at a story in the Gospels where Jesus comes into an interaction with somebody and goes to their home and creates community with somebody that others really don't want to create community with, and that is a man named Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and that's why others didn't want to socialize with him. But I first of all want to kind of read you a little story from the perspective of Zacchaeus of what this must have been like, but I'm going to give you the scripture verse on the screen, and then we're going to walk through it verse by verse this morning. Well, hi, my name is Zacchaeus. They called me short, but I like to say I was a man of disproportionate stature. Although I looked small on the outside, I had great power, position, and influence in my community. In fact, I had more money than most people in the region of Jericho. My position was with Rome. If they wanted me to charge 5% tax, I could charge 15% to the people and keep 10% for myself, as long as I collected the tax Rome wanted. Many people would have loved to trade places with me. Others were afraid of me. To everyone, though, I am sure I appeared happy and successful, a leader in industry in my community, and although everything appeared good on the outside, I had a deep longing inside for something more. I felt like I was missing something. I didn't know what I was missing, but something was lacking. Then I heard about this rabbi from Nazareth, the one people called Jesus. Some were saying he was a great teacher, others a prophet, others Elijah, risen from the dead, and some were even saying he was the Messiah, God in the flesh. But what I remember most was that people were saying he was a rabbi who ate with sinners and outcasts. There was a story going around about a tax collector named Matthew that Jesus actually said, "Come follow me to." That meant Jesus thought a tax collector could become like him. A perfect man, a godly man, a loving man. Jesus had actually gone to the man's house and ate with Matthew and his friends. I remember most people thought this was a bad thing, but it gave me hope. If he could grow and learn from Jesus, maybe I could too. Maybe he would show me the love and sense of belonging Matthew experienced in his own home with Jesus. And I remember when I heard he was passing through Jericho, I so desperately wanted to see him, to meet him, to know him, to see if he would answer my longing, if he would accept me like he had accepted Matthew. And yet I wondered if the rumors and accusations might have got to him. I know what a sinner I was in the eyes of those religious people. I had been cheating other people for years out of their hard-earned money, and no respectable religious leader would give me the time of day. But I just had to see him, to see if he would accept me like he'd accepted Matthew. So I climbed a large sycamore tree when he came into town so I could see over the other people. Okay, quit the short jokes. In the back, I've heard them all before. I need some platforms, Zacchaeus. Need some help reaching the door handle, Zacchaeus. All I can say is I've made a lot of money off people who thought they could get the last laugh at me when tax time came. But then it happened. Jesus saw me. He not only saw me, but he called out to me. He wanted to stay at my house, eat a meal with me, and commune with me like he'd done with Matthew. All of a sudden, I realized what was killing me from the inside out: my greed, my desire for more, my insatiable desire for personal gain and power and position and influence. And I could hear the people muttering, "Jesus is going to stay at the home and eat with that sinner?" I couldn't let Jesus' name be dragged through the mud for my sake like it had with Matthew. So I blurted out, "I give half of everything I own to the poor." And it felt good. I felt free. I felt like the dark spot within my soul was being filled with something better, something incredible. Then I blurted out, "If I've cheated anyone out of anything, I'll give them back 4 times what I took from them." The freedom. Then Jesus said, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham." I'll never forget those words, those inclusive words. I was forgiven, redeemed, freed, loved, accepted, invited into the family of Abraham, and changed in one instance. I wonder if we know what it is to actually experience the depth of forgiveness that Zacchaeus experienced at that moment. I think we read a story like this in the Bible, and oftentimes we can kind of miss the nuance of the actual agony he was going through and being cut off from society, and being cut off from his community, cut off from his family, because as a tax collector, as a Roman tax collector, he had sided with the enemy that was occupying his country, and then taking from his own people and giving it to the very people that were enslaving his own. He was despised, and yet Jesus embraced him. I wonder if we truly understand what it is to be forgiven in a way that changes us, to the fact that we see the dark spots within our soul and we go, that greed inside of me that's been taking more than I should have, I give half of everything I own. I give 4 times back from everybody I took from. It is mind-blowing to think of the transformation that's occurred with Jesus in community. And my own experience is that is the best place to see transformation in your life. The best place is actually to come into community with others where we take off our masks and get real with one another and say what's really going on inside of us, and we allow Jesus to actually deal with that stuff, to actually come clean with things, and to allow him to speak to us about what's really going on. And so the story this morning goes this way. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming this way. There was something inside of Zacchaeus that made him long to know Jesus more, that made him want to know this man who he had heard about, who had changed the life of Matthew, who invited Matthew to become like him. There was something about this man, Jesus, that he longed to become like. And I wonder, do you want to grow in your faith? Do you want to actually take that step towards Jesus that allows you to go further in your faith journey with him? Because I think sometimes we may give mental assent to that, but there's a whole other part of us that isn't sure about that. But that's what we want all of our groups to be about, a place where we grow in our faith in Jesus. If you open up to the middle of your brochure this morning, that's what it says, a place where we grow in our faith in Jesus. This is a place to go deeper in your spiritual life. This is a place you'll have the chance to dig into Scripture and to learn from one another. This is a place to be challenged, to live out the teachings of Jesus in everyday life. This is a place where your discomfort with the truth and all the responsibility it brings with it will cause you to make a choice as to whether you really believe what you believe. See, because I think this is true. Author Donald Miller puts it this way. He says, the trouble with deep belief is that it costs something. And there's something inside of me, some selfish beast of subtle thing that doesn't like the truth at all because it carries responsibility. And if I actually believe these things, I have to do something about them. I have to do some adulting. I have to actually take ownership of what I say I believe and walk it out. And I think if we're truly honest with ourselves, that's where the rubber meets the road and where many of us go, hey, I'm partially in. I'm partially in because the responsibility that it carries makes it challenging to actually want, to desire, to long for that. And see, I think we're longing for the wrong thing. We need to long for a relationship with Jesus and to be transformed by Jesus. And our heart so changes and transforms that we naturally and more easily want to see the other things that we call responsibilities take place in our life. But so long as it's a responsibility, so long as it's a chore, a job, something I ought to do, I have to do, it becomes this tug of war between, I know the things I ought to do, as Paul says, but I struggle to do them. There's something inside of me, some selfish part of me that does what I want to do. And that's where in home group we can discover what it is to fall in love with Jesus, to meet the real Jesus through the life of others around us. See, the Bible is not simply a phone book where we look up answers to the person that we're looking for. It's a math textbook where we learn to solve problems and apply them to life, where we discover what it is to actually live our lives in a way that Jesus wanted. We call ourselves Neighbours Church, and so if we think of just something as simple as Jesus' command to love our neighbors ourselves, we can think, well, that's easy, until we begin to think it through and play it out. Or when you look at Scripture for the first time, and maybe you turn to a passage in the Old Testament, like the one where the Jewish people come in and they tell all the men to circumcise themselves, and then while holding bags of ice to protect themselves, they slaughter them all, and you think, is that how I'm supposed to love my neighbor? It's confusing. See, there's all kinds of parts in the Bible that are confusing, that are not that easy to understand, and actually even may seem to contradict. That doesn't seem like loving my neighbor. That particular story is gruesome and weird and gross, and I don't get it. But in community, when we come into relationship with one another and we open to a passage like that, we can begin to look at the context and understand the story, and we begin to understand what's really being said, and we can understand what it is to actually be the people of God. The story continues. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and began to mutter, "He's gone to be the guest of a sinner." Do you want to go closer to your neighbors? It depends which ones. Right? It's just a hard thing to go, hey, I can't honestly say that that's easy. It's not always easy to enter into a community of people and to find community. But that's what we want all of our groups to be, a place where we can go closer to our neighbors, where we can actually get to know one another. This is a place where everyone knows your name. This is a place to belong, to know others and be known. A place to be real with, whether you're a seasoned Christian or just checking out Jesus for the first time. A place to experience what it means to really love people. A place to care for one another's needs. A place to reach out beyond ourselves and bring Jesus' love in practical ways to our neighbors. George Barna says that 55% of non-Christians believe it's getting harder and harder to make lasting friendships. 62% of born-again Christians claim it's getting harder to make lasting friendships. And get this, 73% of evangelical Christians are finding it difficult to make real friends. Maybe there's higher standards, but maybe, just maybe, they're more committed to Jesus you are, the harder you find it to make friends, because you're making it more about religion than relationship. See, I think that we can very easily, when we come into the church, begin to create all kinds of expectations on one another about what one another is supposed to live up to, on what we're supposed to meet for one another, that perfect people come to church, but I've got to tell you, I'm here, and it isn't true. And I know some of you way too well. And I know that's not true for you either. And there's others of you that are maybe still hiding a little bit, and I don't know you that well, but I'm pretty sure that the person elbowing you beside you says it's true about you too. See, when we actually get to know one another, the reality is there's stuff that we all have to work through. But Jesus was constantly making friends with sinners like Zacchaeus. He was less judgmental and had lower expectations of others for friendship than we do. We have to understand that we were created for community, and without it we are either legalistic or superficial, which is harsh, isn't it? But it's true. Religious people can be incredibly legalistic, and that isn't who Jesus was. And if we just focus on relationship without Jesus, we become rather superficial at times. And don't forget, Jesus spent his entire ministry with a small group of people he did everything with, and none of them were perfect. Judas, for instance, wasn't so perfect. He didn't really do the right thing to Jesus, did he? But yet Jesus chose to share his life with him. Jesus chose to spend 3 years every day walking with Judas. He chose to enter into that relationship knowing ahead of time what would actually happen, knowing that he'd actually be stealing from the treasury all along. knowing that that's who he was and that was his character, and yet Jesus chose to hang out with him. You know, often I hear stories of people who have left the church because of church hurt. But the church is an institution. The church can't hurt people. People hurt people, if we're honest. You can usually trace it back to somebody's name, some story that happened where there was a person that reacted a certain way when they met at a grocery store, or they were hanging out at somebody's house, or they were out in the community, or they were at work. See, institutions, your workplace isn't hurting people. It's people within the institution and the systems that are at play that they're giving themselves over to that hurt people. In the sense, the institution may create parameters and cultures, but people created that. People hurt people. And the reality is, when people hurt people, we have to actually do the hard work of reconciling relationship, because that's actually what the Christian faith is all about. Is about the reconciliation of all people with Jesus and one another. Because one day, you will spend eternity with all of those people that you disagree with about all kinds of things right now. That's the reality. The reality is, they too are going to be in heaven. The vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, the people who wear masks and don't wear masks, they're all going to heaven if they know Jesus and are in a relationship with him. And whatever other controversial thing I want to bring up right now, I'm sure you can fill in the blank for yourself about what those things are. But people hurt people. And the reality is, you go, okay, so why attend a group? You're really selling us. People hurt people. Go to a group. Because the reality is that this is the best place to find Christian community. The best place to find Christian community, where you'll grow with people that aren't like you, that are different from you, that people that you wouldn't necessarily naturally interact with every day, but you can find relationship with people that are younger than you and older than you and at a different stage of life in you, and they can help you in your journey along the way. For me, some of the groups that we've lived in, we've seen a basement flood. The home group were the first ones over to fix things. A move, the birth of a new child and all the meals that come over. Food at a funeral, an entire funeral, all the food that was needed. Making a difference in the world. We peeled potatoes for homeless. We shared meals in a shelter. We've cared for a family of refugees. We've provided for people in need. There's a bond that Jesus creates. Help in life's crisis to get through. Support for marriage, kids, decision making while alone. Sharing in life. Meals together at one another's homes, celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, etc. You go, well, I can find a lot of this with friendships that I have. But there's something about the people of God in community with one another, Jesus and community, that creates a bond that allows you to be transformed in a way that when you only spend time with people that agree with you and act like you and think like you and are part of your own little social bubble, you miss out on. It's why it was so important for Jesus in his high priestly prayer in John 17 that we be one as he and the Father are one. Because there's something where when all nations and all ages and all people come together as one in him, that we're transformed into his likeness and we're able to show the world the love of Jesus in a way that they just wouldn't see it any other way. But it doesn't just happen in a 2-hour meeting. It doesn't happen because you show up to a group once a week and all of a sudden because you put the time in and you sat there, everybody should just love on you and take care of you and do everything that you need. This is not a, hey, I'm coming to just have everybody meet my needs and I'm not even going to share what they are. You have to actually decide to invite others over and decide to invite others in, and you have to communicate through the week and actually share what's going on, and you have to go out of your way to care and help others when that's happening, and you have to go out of your way to let others help and care for you, which in our culture might actually be the hardest piece in this for many of us. And you have to pray for others, and you have to let others pray for you. You have to actually let others in to your community. And maybe it's as simple as inviting them into things that you already do. You find out that you both go grocery shopping on Thursdays, and you do it together now. And you find ways of interacting and integrating your life into the life of others in your group, and I guarantee you that your life will be changed and transformed for the better. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times that amount." That's uncomfortable transformation, isn't it? Now some of you are like, I really don't want to go to a group. He gave away half of his possessions to the poor. I remember when Adrian and I went to Uganda, all of our friends in our home group wrote their names on everything in our house with tape. They're like, you guys are going to come back and just give everything away. So this is mine when you get back. Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." When we read that, we don't necessarily understand it, but when he says this man too is a son of Abraham, it means that Zacchaeus went from being ostracized from the Jewish people, unclean and unable to enter the temple, to being able to reintegrate into society and the community and be accepted by the people of God, and to be able to go back to the temple and re-enter God's presence. He was saying, he's family. He's family. Do you want to grow in trusting Jesus and others, though? On another occasion, Jesus asked a man who's been sick for many years, who's laying at the side of the pool of Bethesda, he says, "Do you want to get well?" Do you want to get well is the question. I think many of us have to decide that we want to actually allow ourselves to be transformed by the love of Jesus. But it is a choice to do that. Zacchaeus made changes because Jesus came into his home, because he actually showed him grace that he had never experienced before, a love that he had never experienced before. And Zacchaeus was made a child of Abraham. He was embraced with complete love. And that transformed him. And so I want to invite you to help us create those kinds of community. And I'm saying I want to invite you to help us to create those communities, because this is new for all of us here. We are creating this for the first time. We're creating these groups for the first time. And the way you form these communities will create the culture and shape the future of what this community looks like within our community. So this is the vision and the dream and the desire, but let's be honest, it's actually up to all of us to now actually live that out, to see that actually take place. And so I want to invite you into 7 different groups that we have to offer. The first is Life's Healing Choices. Kathy Jeffrey is leading that group. Kathy is just over there. She's kind of waving to you. But John Bradshaw, author of Celebrate Recovery, has come out with 8 steps to help people with difficult relationships in the past, parents, marriage, friendships. It's admitting need, the reality choice, getting help, the help choice, letting go, the commitment choice, coming clean, the house cleaning, making changes, the transformation, repairing relationships, the relationship choice, maintaining momentum, the growth choice, and recycling. Perian, I have no idea what that means. I think I've written the wrong word down. The sharing choice. Yes?
This was a typo. I typed in Bradshaw. It should be Baker.
Baker, thank you. And this is going to occur on Mondays. I know it says Monday or Thursday. It's Mondays at 7 p.m. It's an 8-week group based on the book Life's Healing Choices on Monday nights. And anyone wanting freedom from hurts, habits, and hang-ups caused by past relationships, this is the group for you. The second group is the Big Book Recovery. Ask yourself whether you or someone you are in a close relationship with may do too much, owe too much, work too much, exercise too much, spend too much, lust too much, or too often, sleep too much, fantasize too much, grieve too long, gamble too much, use illicit drugs too often, feel used too often, act compulsively too often, become sad too often, lose control too often, become jealous too often, get manipulated too often, be too early too often, feel guilty too often, feel hopeless, and you get the picture. Because it's people seeking to get free from addictions. It's a recovery program about addiction and codependency. Wayne and Wendy Allen, I'm not sure if they're here this morning, but Wayne and Wendy are the people to talk to. They've been running these courses for 35 years and helped hundreds of people through addictions and to walk out of it. And I know that there are multiple people here this morning that have walked with them and seen freedom in their lives in a way that they always longed for. The next group is the marriage course by Alpha. It's a practical 7-session course designed to support couples looking for practical support to strengthen their relationship. This is not marriage counseling, but it will help you give tools to create and enhance any relationship. We suggest taking a course like this every couple of years. If you're married, to work on your relationship. It's like taking your car in for a tune-up, only it's working on something far more important. How many people go to the dentist on an annual basis just to get a checkup, right? And how many people take their car in to get the oil changed and fixed up, right? This is more important than that, and yet often overlooked. It's for any couple who's part of the church. It's 7 weeks. There's videos and discussion. It's going to be Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock every second week, starting October the 4th at Matt, who was doing announcements today, and Pastor Sheila, who was leading worship this morning. And it's why to improve your marriage. There's also the worship team, which is a little bit of a different group in that it's a ministry team, but they meet on Wednesday nights at Bruce and Suzanne McGregor's home, and encourage you to reach out to Pastor Sheila if you're interested in being part of the worship team. There's an East End home group led by Bonnie and Blair Stevens and Roger and Suzanne Linton as well. I think Roger's here this morning. Roger's just over there. And they meet in Blackburn Hamlet on Thursday nights 3 times a month. And if you live out in the East End, that's a great group to be a part of. Encourage you to look into that. It's on the back of your brochure. The next group is the Gospel of Mark, where we're just going to look at the life of Jesus. We're going to read through the 16 chapters of the Gospel of Mark this fall together on Thursday nights. It's going to meet at the exact same time as the youth group meets on Thursday nights, which might be problematic for those of you with little kids looking for a babysitter. I know that, but we wanted to offer something on every night of the week. And so Thursdays at 7 p.m., it is going to be going for 12 weeks, and come and talk to me about that. It is starting not this Thursday, but next Thursday night will be our first night. That night will be an introduction. We'll give out the booklets, and we'll kind of talk about what we're doing and do a few things to get to know one another as a group. So come and chat with me if you're interested in that one. And finally, the youth group, grades 7 to second year university now. There's monthly fun events, weekly games. They're doing the Chosen series, and it's Thursday nights at 7 o'clock, and that's at my home. And you can email neighborschurchyouth@gmail.com for more information. Sparrow and Eden would love to talk to you about that. We want all our groups to be a place where you can grow in your faith in Jesus, a place where we grow closer to our neighbors, a place where we can kind of take that awkward step of actually getting out of our cage and getting free and allowing ourselves out to actually be with other people. I know it's terrifying for some people right now, but we need to choose a group to start out with. They're all in the back of your brochure this morning. Email the group leader and just say, hey, when are you starting? And just verify the night of the week if you're wondering what that is. And attend. Step out of your comfort zone. It will be okay. The leaders are incredibly hospitable people.